with myself. Let's actually listen. Today we're going to learn how many degrees are in different polygons besides just a triangle. Okay, so if we notice, and we're going to discover the formula so that you understand why it exists using this little chart. So this polygon has 3 sides. It has 1 triangle that can be formed. So the sum of the measures of the interior angles would just be really 1 times 180. We know that there's 180 degrees in the triangle. Okay. The next shape is a quadrilateral. Notice that it can be divided by drawing in one of the diagonals, either this way or this way. We can divide it into 2 triangles. So it has 4 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4. We've divided it up into 2 triangles. So if we take and plug in 2, the number of triangles, because there would be 180 degrees in the first triangle, 180 degrees in the second triangle. So together, if we add those or double them, we will get that a quadrilateral will have 360, which some of you already knew that fact. Okay. The next one is a pentagon. It's a weird looking pentagon, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it has 5 sides. This time you can see that it has 1, 2, 3 triangles inside of it. So each triangle has 180 degrees inside, so we can either add 180 plus 180 plus 180, or we can multiply by 3, and we should get 540. See if you guys can either continue the pattern you notice, or try drawing in segments to create triangles. But you will notice that the number of sides is increasing by 1, which then, therefore, the number of triangles will increase by 1. And see if you can find the measures of the hexagon, the heptagon, and the octagon. All right, so you can notice that each time we are obviously multiplying by the number of triangles. Now, you do want to look at the relationship between the number of triangles that can be formed in regards to the sides. So let's kind of come up with a formula using n. N standing for any number of sides. Let's suppose we had like a 300-sided polygon. How many degrees would be inside of it? Well, look at the relationship. What is the relationship between the number of sides and the number of triangles that can be formed? What's the relationship between all of these numbers? Kaylin? It's 2 less, right? 3 minus 2 is 1. 4 minus 2 is 2. 5 minus 2 is 3. 6 minus 2 is 4. So if this is n, the number of triangles that can be formed is always 2 less, n minus 2. And then you can see, to find the sum of the measures of the interior angles, we always take the number of triangles times 180, because 180 is the number of degrees in each triangle. So the formula will be n minus 2 times 180. And that will work for any shape. Now, some students like, obviously we memorized this one, some students like to memorize some of these so that they don't have to use the formula every time. So if I say what is the sum of the measures of the angles in a pentagon, you could just memorize 540 and then just write it down. If you don't, then you're going to have to plug 5 in for n and solve it using the formula. So that's going to be up to you. But here are the formulas, and this is for the sum of the inside of an n-gon. Again, n can stand for any number, and that's n minus 2 times 180. And again, that exists because this represents the number of triangles that are actually inside the shape. So if you remember that chart we had from yesterday that we started filling out, on the back there's a chart for the formulas that looks like this. So you might want to add that, otherwise I will remind us to do that at the end. n minus 2 times 180. If you want to put the 180 in front, 180 times n minus 2, I don't care, it doesn't matter. Now we're also going to add an additional problem. Find the measure of one interior angle if it's regular. What does it mean to be a regular polygon? This was something we talked about yesterday. What does it mean to be a regular polygon?
All its sides and angles.
Good. All the sides and angles are congruent. Okay? So just like a triangle, if we knew a triangle was equiangular and equilateral, We knew it was a regular triangle. All the sides and angles were congruent. What would each angle have to be? 60. There's 180 degrees total in a triangle. If I have 3 of the same angles, if I divide that by 3, each of them will be 60. So what did we do to find that? We took the sum of the interior and we divided it by how many angles / how many sides there were. So if you wanted to do this for any shape, you're going to take and divide the sum by n, which is the number of sides. So this would be the formula n minus 2 times 180, all divided by n. So if you had a pentagon, you'd take 540 and divide by 5. If you had a hexagon, you would take your 720 and divide by 6. So you would always divide by the number of sides you have, which also is the number of angles you have. Just draw an arrow, that's formula can go over there because it's kind of hard to squeeze it in there. You can see that these are all regular polygons. So sometimes they will use the words, it's a regular pentagon. Sometimes they'll give you a picture with markings. So if you were to see these markings, that would indicate that it is regular. All right, so some problems, and some of them will be pictures, some of them will be words. You have to read carefully. Find the sum of the measures of the angles in, so that's inside sum, of a decagon. How many sides are in a decagon? Helen? 10. So as soon as you see decagon, you want to jot down n equals 10. And we're looking for the sum. So some students will have trouble because they don't know what formula to pick. Read the sentence. If it asks you for the sum, you're using the sum formula. If it asks you for the measure of an angle, that's one angle. So we're going to use the sum of the interior angles formula, which you will have to memorize these for next week. And then we just plug in 10. Complete your order of operations, which would be to do what's in your parentheses first. So we'll get 8 times 180, which will get me 144 degrees. Now, sometimes they're not going to ask you for the sum, rather they're going to give you the sum and ask you to work backwards to find the measure. So it says the sum of the measures of the angles of a polygon is, so this is the sum. How many sides does a polygon have? So you'll start with the formula again. But this time, instead of plugging in for n, we'll plug this number in for the sum. This is the sum. So 3,240 equals n minus 2 times 180. Then it's just algebraic solving. Now some students will distribute, which you can if you want to. It's going to add an extra step. But if we see multiplication, we know the inverse of multiplying is dividing. So instead of having to distribute and then add and divide, you could just divide first. And whenever I divide these numbers, I should get 18.
Tristan Bowman, please report to the office. Tristan Bowman.
So 18 is equal to n minus 2. And lastly, we would add 2 to both sides to get n equals 20. And so that has 20 sides. Should tack on the word sides at the end if they ask how many sides. Just like up here, we tacked on degrees. Okay, on the homework, you just want to read carefully as to which formula to use. This one says find the measure of one interior angle. So I'm using the second formula. The measure of one interior angle is n minus 2 times 180, all divided by n. And this is only if it's a regular polygon, which they do tell us it's a regular 15gon. So n is 15. So we plug 15 in. And then we follow our order of operations. We complete what's in the parentheses. 15 minus 2 is 13. multiply 13 times 180, and we'll get 2,340, all divided by 15. And then lastly, we divide those, and we'll get 156 degrees. It's the measure of one angle. Okay, the last one says find the number of sides. So at that point I know, I'm looking for what n is. N is unknown. N is a question mark. Find the number of sides of a regular polygon if the measure of one angle is 165. Which formula am I using? The first one or the second one? I know the measure of one angle. Which formula? Second one, right? We know the measure of one angle. We don't know the sum. So I'm going to start with that. I kind of wish I could scroll down more, but I can't. And we're going to substitute in 165, not for n, for the measure of the interior angle. It's going to go on the left. I'm actually going to open a new page and rewrite this. Some of you are not going to be able to see that. And then those of you that know your algebra, this shouldn't be hard to solve, but those of you that struggle with solving, this may be the hardest problem in the unit that you have. What would I do first to solve this for n? Katie? Good. The first thing you see is division of n. The inverse of dividing is to multiply. So we will get 165n equals n minus 2 times 180. What's the next thing I would need to do? I have n's on both sides, right? I'm going to need to get the other n over. I unfortunately can't move it with the 2, so I do actually need to distribute. Now you are distributing backwards because the 180 happens to be at the end. Okay. 180n minus 360. Now we'll get our variables on one side. So I'm going to move this n, this 180n, over using inverse operation, so I will subtract it. And we'll get negative 15n equals, bring down the negative with the 360, and then we divide by negative 15, and we'll get n equals 24. So this is a 24-sided polygon. All right, the last few problems are picture problems instead of word problems. So instead of telling you how many sides it has, you're going to have to count them up by looking at the shape. And then you may have to figure out the sum of the interiors. So find the value of x and each missing angle. So notice these are all interior angles. You need to think about how many degrees are inside the shape. So how many sides does it have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So either memorize how many degrees are inside of a pentagon, or use the formula. If you memorize it, then you'll just say 540. If you don't memorize it, then you have to do this formula. Okay, so if you memorize them, it's going to make your problem a lot faster. So, just like we know triangle sum has 180, so we would add everything inside equal to 180, this is equal to 540. So all of these have to add up to be 540. Now some students just like to actually subtract, 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 and then write the equation. But I'm going to write the whole equation. We would add all of the angles. So 106 plus x plus 5 plus x plus 135 and plus 94 has to equal the total number of degrees inside that shape, which is 540. And then this is straight solving algebra. Combine all of your like terms. So combine all of the numbers. Combine the 106, the plus 5, the plus 135, and the plus 94. And that should get me 340. Add together your x's. We do have 1x plus 1x, which is 2x. And then we just subtract and divide. 2x equals 200, therefore x equals 100. Now, they did ask us to find the value of x, which we did, and the measure of each missing angle. So we just have to take this and plug it back in. So this would be 100 degrees. This would be 105 degrees. 100 plus 5 is 105. You can just write those in the picture. You don't have to, since there's no letters or... The next one tells us that we have a quadrilateral. So how many degrees are in a quadrilateral? And sometimes you'll see me write this, quad sum, like triangle sum. How many degrees? Helen? 360. Again, that's one I would memorize. If not, 4 minus 2 times 180. Now you'll notice something about this. We're given 100, we're given 90, and then we're given the fact that these two are congruent. Those are little congruent markings. They're just a little different than what we're used to seeing. You might want to label them with a variable that's the same because they're congruent. And then you can write your equation. X plus 90 plus 100 equals 360. Go ahead and solve that one. I'm passing out your homework. We should be getting x equals 85. Okay. Now, the last one is actually one of the harder ones because none of the numbers are given to you. What do we notice about the shape by the markings? Joseph? All the sides are congruent, so that's going to make this a regular shape. And this has how many sides? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is a regular pentagon. Okay. Angle A is one interior angle. So you would want to figure out what is the measure of the interior angle, either using the formula, or if you memorize how many degrees are in a pentagon, which is 540, you just have to divide by how many angles there are. There's 5 equal angles inside. So we should get 108. Whether you plug 5 in here and here, but that'll give you the measure of each angle. What would the value of B have to be then? Notice B is an exterior angle. Maddie? Yes, it would. We have a linear pair here. Any linear pairs have to add to 180 and be supplementary. So B would be 72. Okay. So your homework is to complete this worksheet. You'll see some of the stuff's from yesterday. Is it a polygon, yes or no? The one thing I do want to tell you, on numbers 5 and 6, real quick, on the directions for 5 and 6, it says name each polygon by its vertices, then identify the sides and angles. Just cross off, then identify the sides and angles. I don't want you to have to list out all the segments and all the angles, because I think it's kind of stupid and a waste of time. So cross off that part, and then the rest of them, you should be good.